This is Create the Next from Pro CFO Partners, where every week we explore strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help today's businesses put their financial picture in context.
Welcome back to Create the Next. I'm Chris Bentliff and Karl Almond is joining us today. Karl, it is a brand new year as you and I are having this conversation. It's the start of 2024, and I think that is a great time. I love to talk about where are we headed, why are we headed there, goal setting and goal reaching. And I think you've got some interesting insights and expertise in this area, and I think we want to give our listeners and our watchers maybe some different ideas or some unique perspective on. Everybody kind of has I'm going to create goals, but there's ways we can structure those, and there's ways that we can kind of create a scaffolding around them so that it's more likely that we will follow them, or when we adjust and adapt, we'll do that strategically and intelligently. So welcome, and let's talk first about why do I got to create goals? What's the point of that?
Well, thanks for having me today, Chris. This is great. It's nice to be here. I think one of the things that becomes a challenge for most businesses, we go through this very involved business planning cycle, and the business plan is almost like an elephant. It's so big, it's hard to know where to start. And I use an old phrase that I learned in time management from Alan Lakian, as a matter of fact, where he used to say, how do you eat an elephant? And it's take a bite, one bite at a time. So most businesses are challenged when they look at their business plan about how am I going to accomplish it? So by taking the business plan and start to evolve it into your goals, you're able to break it down into bite-sized pieces. And that gives you the ability to actually accomplish those lofty goals and challenges that you set out during your planning.
So help me understand the definition or the difference between a plan and a goal, because I think sometimes we get confused about the two. We're going to do our annual planning. Is that the same as, and while we're there, we're going to create our goal? Or what's the relationship between those?
The way that I always try to think about it is that the goals are kind of inextricably linked to the planning. It's something that comes out of the planning kind of organically, because you say, well, I want to increase my sales 50% this year. Well, that's part of your plan, but how do you get there? What specific tasks do I have to take? So during your plan, in the back of your mind, you're thinking about, well, I may have some marketing goals I need to do. I may need to staff up my sales department a little bit. I may need to do an acquisition to bring in new products if I'm going to really accomplish this. So I feel like when I'm doing my plan, I'm thinking about those overall targets of what I want to do, but goals help me to actually get there.
Which I love. I love that sort of how we can parse that out. It's basically which bite are you going to take next, and why. So most of us have heard of SMART goals. Break that down for us, because I think there's a couple different ways that we can structure our goals. And one of the ways, and I can hear Nelson Tepworth, the CEO, in my mind saying, measure it, measure it, measure it. What can you measure? What can you measure? So talk to us a little bit about those goals, because it gets really easy to get high and lofty, or to have a meeting in January and forget about it by March, or to just kind of think we're going to do this, team, without, as you pointed out, breaking this down. So how can I think about my goals in a way that is almost fractional, so that I can start to parse that out into something more understandable?
What I've traditionally used is the SMART acronym for planning my goals. And what that challenges us to do is to make our goals specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. So that's where the SMART comes from. The focus, is always on how do you make it measurable? How do you get it specific? And again, it's taking those challenges that we've established in our business plan and starting to break them down into actionable steps. And a lot of times we finance people get wound up in, it's got to be a percentage, or it's got to be a dollar amount. I've learned over the years that goals can also be yes and no answers. You can set a target that says, did I hire a new sales guy? that may very well be a goal. Is it measurable? Yes. It's a binary, yes or no. Did I hire the guy or not? So it doesn't always have to be a financial target to be measurable. I think we tend to get wound up in that sometimes and saying, well, if it's going to be successful, it's got to be a financial measure, a percentage, a dollar increase, a dollar decrease. So I think it's good to keep open-minded a little bit when we're setting our goals too. The attainable piece, I get a little challenged with at times because one of the other acronyms that I've been introduced to recently is FAST for goal setting. So FAST. And there's some items related to FAST that I find very, very interesting. And they tend to align even better. And we do a lot with EOS companies. It aligns better in some respects with the EOS philosophies. Even though if you talk to the EOS people, they're going to tell you use SMART. FAST is frequently discussed, ambitious, specific, and transparent. So what I've started evolving is using the two kind of in conjunction with each other. And the real only conflict you kind of get into is attainable versus ambitious. It's you want to make the goals challenging enough so that you're accomplishing something that you wouldn't have otherwise, but you also want to be able to have success. You want your people and your teams and yourself to feel good that you can actually meet that goal. A story I want to share with you, one of the companies I was working for was an EOS practitioner. And we had done a very good job of establishing our meeting cadence, and we were having our L10 meetings and our planning sessions. And we had also evolved to that next level. So I actually had my finance team that we rolled out rocks, our goals from EOS, to the finance team. And at one point, the team came to me and said, we don't like the way you guys are setting goals. And I went, what? What do you mean? They said, you're not following the rules. And I went, what rules are you talking about? They said, are we supposed to be using SMART? And I was really taken aback that my lower level team was taking the management team to task for not doing what they needed to do when they were doing their goal setting. My team felt that we were just going through the paces. We weren't really embracing what the goals were supposed to be. We were focusing more on attainable and not ambitious. And I thought that was interesting. But one of the things that we did to help the management team was we, as a finance team, we created a little hand toy called a Smart Rock. And what the Smart Rock was literally a rock that we got out of the parking lot with googly eyes on it and made it our Smart Rocks. And at the next quarterly planning session, I passed those out to the L10. And everybody was kind of like, what's this for? I said, we need to start being smarter with our rocks. And this is a reminder I want you to go put in your office. And what happened was it became a little bit of a joke. But as I went around the office afterwards, every one of the managers had that rock somewhere where they could see it. And it almost became kind of a joke, but a reminder about our goals.
What a great idea to create some stickiness around the idea and that idea of using some sort of object or memento to sort of make it tangible. That's a great, somebody write that down, right? Because that's a really good idea, everybody. But you bring up a really interesting point, which is, should we be choosing a model, SMART or FAST or the hybrid or even, something else? And who should make that decision? Is that because I think it was an appropriate thing for somebody to raise their hand and say, well, hold on, we thought we were doing this.
Yep.
Somebody else had said, well, we're going to do this, but maybe that hadn't been communicated. So talk to me a little bit about how organizationally we should be making those decisions and how do we make sure that everybody understands kind of the road ahead, even the parts that are ambiguous that we can't totally define.
I think it comes down to what fits best for the business. And I'm really starting to evolve into the hybrid myself. I've been kind of using SMART for quite a while now, but having been introduced to FAST, there's those pieces that I really love. And that's the transparency. And it's kind of getting back to what you're talking about, is we have to remember that in order to be successful with our goals, everybody in the organization has to be aware of what we're trying to do. So where SMART gives us kind of the methodology for how to formulate the goals, I almost think FAST brings in, what do we do after we formulated it? We want to look at them often. We want to make sure they're ambitious and specific, but we want to communicate them. So I think it comes back, and to answer the question, who should make that decision? I think it's an organization decision that needs to be made probably at that management team or L10 level, where they agree what they think the best methodology is. But be open, be willing to adapt, and be willing to change if the need arises.
And I think there's something useful and maybe literal about the acronyms. Are you an organization that leans more towards sort of discipline, methodical, sort of piece by piece, break it down? You might be a SMART goal organization. Are you more agile? Are you subscribing to the move fast and break things, the old Facebook kind of mantra, or are you a hybrid, which most of us are today? So How do you figure out what's right for you? I think it's what I'm hearing you say is figure it out. Whatever you decide, figure it out, and then you can start to create that kind of scaffolding that you need. How often, whether we choose smart or fast or some hybrid, what's our timeline? Like, how often do we revisit this? How often do we visit progress? Is this a weekly or a monthly, or how does management report versus executive management, or what are some insights you have on that?
So the traditional, and this has kind of continued since the early days when Drucker first came out with the concept of objectives, is that you do it on a quarterly basis. You don't want to do it for a year because you wait the whole year and never find out what's going on. Doing it monthly is too quickly. It doesn't give you enough time to really make accomplishment, especially on ambitious goals. So the quarterly timing and cadence seems to work very well. That check-in should be going on more frequently. And one of the items that I love about EOS was goal check or rock check is done every single week, so that you're getting a measure of how successful the team is on their progress on their rocks. And if you see that someone's having issues or problems and they're not making progress, it gives you an opportunity to take action before it's too late. You don't want to be doing it in the last week of the quarter saying, oh, I need help.
And one of the benefits of thinking that way is sending a spreadsheet around is not a check-in. Like that is not sending your numbers around and saying, here's where we are. That's not the same as evaluating, thoughtfully considering, putting it up in comparison to, reviewing the dynamics between what we thought was going to be happening at the start of the quarter versus what's happening now, all these sorts of different things. And what I'm hearing you say is you have to have regular touch points that are beyond information transfer. You need to be able to, it doesn't need to be an all-day thing, but you need to be able to look at things in context and then adjust or review or calibrate your goal accordingly. Yes? Exactly. So when it comes time to kind of executing, what's our key takeaway? Like if we were going to say, the thing we want you to remember, everybody, as we close out our conversation, is it that I should be reviewing this more regularly? Is it that I should be choosing my sort of my approach? What's if you do nothing else, get this right? Kind of that's I'm putting you on the spot, but that's our kind of nugget. Where do you think we should land on that?
I hate to spread it to two things, but there's two things I wanted to mention. One is, remember, it's part of your job. Too many people look at these goals as being something beyond their normal day-to-day. If you're building the goals right and they're intersecting with the plan and with everything else that's going on in the business, it is part of your job. So don't classify them as something extra. The other thing that we tend not to do is, as a good manager, you should be delegating things. There's nothing wrong with delegating your goals or rocks or pieces of them. And I tend to break them into milestones so that I take my goal or rock and break it into milestones so that I've got pieces and I can dole those out to my individual team members to help get to that point. It also shows that the goal is throughout the organization, that everybody's part of it. And it's important that, again, you have that transparency, but that you have that culture that everybody's going in the same direction.
I love that. And I love your, first of all, both of those takeaways are great. It's part of your job. That's so easy to forget. And where we can think it's one of those sort of vague, nebulous, we'll visit this whenever. But that accountability is part of the job. That's an obvious but important thing. You wouldn't have mentioned it if it wasn't so often overlooked. And I love this idea of kind of breaking down the rocks, maybe into pebbles, if you will.
Yep.
I'd love to have you back, Karl, so we can kind of continue that conversation. I think there's some interesting things there, even just specific to EOS and kind of how we can operate in that space with a little bit more intelligence. Karl Almond is principal at Pro CFO Partners. He's the smartest guy in the room. And Karl, it's been a great conversation to start our year with goal setting, and I'm looking forward to our next one. Thank you.
Yes, thanks so much, Chris. It's been a real pleasure.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Visit ProCFOPartners.com for more strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help you put your business's financial picture in context.